Mr. President, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, on behalf of the government of Sri Lanka, I would like to congratulate Ambassador Prasad Karyavasan on his election as the President of this conference. I assure you the fullest cooperation of my delegation to lead this conference towards a successful conclusion. Over the years, and particularly since the adoption of UN Programme of Action in 2001, Sri Lanka has worked tirelessly at local, national and international levels to address the challenges posed by the illicit trade in small arms and light weapons. Your election as the President of this conference is also a manifestation of that commitment Sri Lanka has shown at international level. Mr. President, the accumulation and proliferation of illicit small arms and light weapons continues to be a serious threat to peace, stability, and sustainable development in many parts of the world. Small arms and light weapons kill people on a massive scale. According to some estimates, about 1,000 people die every day, impacting on the most vulnerable groups in the society. 5 years since the adoption of the POA, we have gathered here to review and take stock of what we have achieved so far and to adopt an outcome document, further committing ourselves to ensure that small arms and light weapons do not end up in the hands of unauthorized recipients, in particular terrorists and criminals. There are many areas where we have made progress during the last 5 years. Yet, much more needs to be done to ensure the full and effective implementation of the POA. Sri Lanka was the first to establish a national commission to deal with the proliferation of illicit small arms and light weapons in the region. The National Commission consists of all stakeholders, including civil society, which works in tandem with the government to implement the POA. In fact, my delegation to this conference includes 2 representatives from civil society. As a concrete manifestation of the implementation of the POA, in my country, more than 35,000 small arms were destroyed at a public weapons destruction event in 2005 organized by the National Commission. The event created a great deal of public awareness on the issue and was also seen as a confidence-building measure for taking steps to effectively address the proliferation of illicit small arms and light weapons in Sri Lanka. Earlier this month, the National Commission, in partnership with Safer World, conducted a pilot survey on small arms and community safety in Hambantota district in the south of Sri Lanka. It is expected that the findings, methodology and lessons learned of this survey will be useful in planning and conducting a nationwide survey. Sri Lanka is pleased to submit our national report to this conference with yet another update on the national implementation of the POA. This is in addition to the reports that we have already submitted in 2003 and 2005 at the 2 biennial meetings. Mr. President, the nexus between terrorism and trafficking of weapons constitutes an unprecedented challenge in the full implementation of the POA. Moreover, the heinous crime against humanity of forced recruitment of child soldiers in conflict situations around the world is primarily a result of illicit trade in small arms and light weapons. We all know that thousands of children in the world today who are forced to take up arms, leaving their homes, schools, and playgrounds, are first trained in the handling of small arms and light weapons. In our view, the excessive accumulation and easy availability of small arms and light weapons and ammunition is the primary cause of illicit trafficking and trade in small arms and light weapons. We therefore call upon this conference to take further measures to interdict and curb this unbridled supply of these weapons to non-state actors such as terrorists and criminals. Sri Lanka believes that a separate multilateral process should be initiated as a follow-up to this conference to find new approaches to deny the access of small arms and light weapons to non-state actors. We share the view that authorization for arms transfers need to be streamlined and effective systems for end-user certification should be in place to prevent legal transfers from ending up in the hands of unauthorized recipients, such as terrorists and criminals. In this context, international and regional cooperation with regard to the interdiction of shipments carrying illicit conventional weapons needs to be further strengthened through effective border and custom control and information sharing among law enforcement authorities. We call for greater regional action and cooperation in this regard, including in the Asian region. Sri Lanka became the first Asian country to implement the Container Security Initiative and Megaport Initiative, and we are confident that these specific measures will also contribute to the further strengthening of our common efforts to prevent conventional arms, including small arms and light weapons, from falling into the hands of terrorists and criminals. Mr. President, Sri Lanka supports measures for the prevention of illicit transfer and unauthorized access to and use of man-portable air defense systems. These defense systems can be easily carried, concealed, fired, and obtained by non-state actors. While we continue to strengthen international and regional cooperation aimed at preventing these weapon systems from falling into the hands of non-state actors, it is important to address this issue further, preferably by a group of governmental experts as a part of the follow-up process of this conference. A small arm is a stick if it is without ammunition. Therefore, we believe that if we are to eliminate illegal use of small arms from our midst, we also need to find ways and means to curb and eradicate illicit trade in ammunition. Therefore, further steps have to be considered to address this issue in a comprehensive manner. In this regard, while we urge all states to put in place appropriate control on stockpiles of ammunition at national level, we also support the recommendation made by the working group on tracing to initiate a separate multilateral process on ammunition. Mr. President, international cooperation and assistance for national capacity building and to assist in matching needs with resources play an integral part in the full implementation of the POA. Resource mobilization, lessons learned, sharing of best practices, and training and capacity building of law enforcement officials play an important role. compilation of a database on the needs of affected states and to undertake a study on the financial and technical needs of developing countries is implementing the POA are important further steps that we can take in this direction. Sri Lanka has already benefited from international assistance, in particular in connection with the establishment of the National Commission and capacity building of relevant government officials and civil society actors. We are grateful for the technical and financial assistance received from the UN Department of Disarmament Affairs, UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs, and Safer World. Mr. President, we need to make further progress with the POA context on our work relating to several other important areas such as brokering, marking the tracing, stockpile management and security, destruction of surplus weapons, and sharing best practices. We must also endure to address further several other important aspects such as special needs of children, women and elderly, victim assistance, education and public awareness, rehabilitation, disarmament, weapons collection and demobilization. Mr. President, my delegation hopes that a forward-looking outcome document with a set of realistic and achievable targets and a strengthened and goal-oriented follow-up mechanism will be adopted by this conference in order to ensure full and effective implementation of the POA. Thank you.
I thank His Excellency Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa, Secretary, Minister of Defence of Sri Lanka, for his statement and for kind word addressed to Chair. I now invite Her Excellency Ms. Maria del Refugio Gonzalez, Under Secretary of Multilateral Issues of Human Rights, Mexico.
Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon.
Ambassador Prasad Kariyavasam, officers of the Bureau, distinguished delegates and representatives. My delegation would like to congratulate Ambassador Kariyavasam at his formal assumption of the presidency of this important process. We'd also like to congratulate his predecessor, Ambassador Silvestre Rowe, for his efforts at the head of the preparatory committee. And we also express our welcome to the 6 vice presidents from our region, in whom we have deposited our trust. And we also wish to congratulate the other officers of the Bureau. Mr. President, from the outset of the consultations, Mexico has stressed the importance of having a diagnosis on the implementation of the program of action at all levels, identifying obstacles, proposing the necessary mechanisms and strategies to overcome such obstacles. Mexico also stressed the need for an exchange of experiences and the adoption of additional measures to make progress in the complete and effective implementation of the program of action. Mexico has consistently stated that the review conference is an opportunity for the international community to agree on specific actions to fight the illicit traffic of small arms and light weapons. We're also convinced that such activities will be a fundamental element of the worldwide strategy to fight terrorism, to fight organized transnational crime, and to foster respect for international humanitarian law. Mexico grants a great deal of importance to the follow-up and full implementation of the program of action, and thus, since it was adopted in 2001, we've been working in various national, regional, and worldwide activities, which are reflected in the 5 reports we have submitted. This has included legislative and administrative activities, the establishment of an intersectorial group to deal with this issue, preparing strategies to collect weapons, adopting bilateral agreements, and an intense participation in multilateral negotiations of instruments dealing with these weapons. A variety of government actors have also worked in this effort, and together with civil society, good results have been obtained. The positions of my delegation here is based on consultations that we've undertaken by and between various branches of government, NGOs, and legislative bodies. The program of action has major strengths. However, our work in the next few days will be to ensure that the final document will contain agreements not only with a strong commitment with the content of the program of action, but also that they include on the agenda that which many delegations, particularly from our region, consider to be additional topics. This includes control of transfers to states as well as non-state actors, whose meaning and significance, as you all know, has not yet been fully defined. Ammunitions, brokering, that is illicit brokering, the gender perspective, and the well-recognized link between the final document of the 2005 World Summit and the illicit traffic of small weapons, small arms and light weapons in development, as well as peace, safety and security, and fighting organized crime, crime prevention, and the protection of human rights, and possession by civilians. This is an issue which Mexico views as very important and views as fundamental. Negotiations which will arrive at agreements on a better way to establish good practices in the regulation and possession by civilians of such weapons, safeguarding the right of citizens for responsible ownership when domestic law so states. For Mexico and other countries that have referred to this in their national reports, control of ownership by civilians are a key factor, since the weapons that are circulating unlawfully were previously traded legally. Such weapons fall in the hands of common criminals as well as organized criminals, organized crime, and also terrorist groups, which constitutes a serious threat to national, regional, and international security. In this connection, my delegation has read with keen interest UNIDIR's report entitled 5 Years of Implementation of the United Nations Program of Action on Small Arms and Light Weapons, where it states that since 2002, 70% of states' national reports have referred to the problems of ownership by civilians, showing that while this item may not have been explicitly included in the POA, states consider this to be an indispensable issue in order to achieve a better implementation of the program of action. In the case of African countries, UNIDIR notes that 76% of national reports refer to this topic of ownership by civilians. Among the members of the OAS, 18 out of 25 countries include this issue, and that is the case of Mexico. With respect to Europe, 68% of national reports have also included this issue. Finally, with regard to the Asia-Oceania region, 90% of reports refer to this topic. Reports from this region agree that one of the 4 priorities for the appropriate implementation of the program is, and I quote, regulating ownership by civilians and the need to ensure that small arms and related ammunitions should not reach terrorist groups and non-state actors. Mr. President, Mexico faces the problem of the illicit traffic of small arms and light weapons at the national level, and we are fully conscious